If someone who is overweight is up on stage talking to you about discipline and denying the flesh, that you would earnestly listen to them? Most men are insecure and divorced or subservient to their wives.
This is a joke. This has to be a joke.
Young men are lost these days. Feminism has destroyed traditional values.
Young men are these days, and it's women's fault. Hello lovely people, my name is Emma. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome if you are new. Did you know that millennials ruined Christianity? Well, me neither, but I never doubt the truth of an evangelical YouTube title. Those damn millennials ruin everything. First, we ate too much avocado toast. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head everything that millennials have been blamed for, but the entirety of Christianity? Wow, that's kind of an amazing achievement. Do you know, as an atheist and a millennial, technically, I know you wouldn't know because I'd be kind of living my best life if we actually ruined Christianity. So somebody recommended this to me on Blue Sky. By the way, I have long departed the social media site that shall not be named. And I am on Blue Sky, just Emma Thorne. I'm also on Instagram, that's probably where I post the most. If you wanted to follow me on social media, there's a link in bio in my description that has all of the things. Somebody recommended this to me on Blue Sky, and I was instantly suspicious given the description. Also, I don't know if this is like a false memory, some sort of weird deja vu thing, I don't know. I was convinced that this video was called How Millennials Ruined the Church. So I don't know if they changed the title or if I'm having a breakdown. Let's see if you can catch on to my suspicion as I read this description to you. Millennials' influence on Christianity has many problems. Women pastors, amongst a lot of other things, are one of them. Others being things like millennial pastors/leaders don't take the church seriously. They aren't, capital A, good, capital G, role models. They've destroyed the traditional family model God set up through feminism and shaming the biblical role of a woman, and men being weak and not strong enough, now that is redundant, I don't care who you are, to stand up for what is right and fight back against demonic ideologies. If you can work out what I think their problem actually is, which isn't millennials, shout out your answer now. If you said women, that's definitely it. All of the problems are women pastors existing. The traditional family has been ruined by feminism, shaming the biblical role of women, and men aren't strong enough to keep their women in line. Doesn't this just sound like somebody's entire problem with Christianity now is, well, in general, that it's, progressive, that most modern Christianity, like most modern religions, has become more progressive as society has become more progressive. Because that's how time works. That's how culture adapts. That's how society functions. We could go back to the old days when the only people that could vote were incredibly wealthy, land-owning white men, if you wanted to, but a lot of the dudes that have these same complaints would probably not like that very much. I don't know. Let's not jump to any conclusions. Let's watch the video and see, maybe we'll watch this and we'll go, oh my god, millennials did ruin Christianity. And then we'll have a party. Naturally, most of you wouldn't have realised that I am in fact a millennial because I look so incredibly youthful. The reason for that is mostly genetics. To be honest, my mum looks very young for her age. Another smaller but contributing factor is skincare. If you want to keep your skin fresh and healthy, you've got to have that SPF, you've got to have that moisturisation. That's why I'm very happy to share today's sponsor, Geology, who helps me with my skin. Geology is a 38-time award-winning, yes, even more awards since last time I mentioned them. Personalised skincare company. They have over 10,000 5-star reviews. They create simple and effective skincare just for you. Whether you're looking to fight acne, reduce oiliness, target under eye puffiness, you just want smoother, more hydrated skin, Geology has what you need. Geology makes it so easy to get started. Just click on the link down below, take a 60-second diagnostic quiz. You tell Geology about your skin and your goals, and their team of dermatologists will design a personalised routine just for you that is sent straight to your door no fuss. Thus arrives your neat little box of tricks. You get these cards. One which tells you what your regimen is. You can see here that it is all dermatologically tested and cruelty-free. They tell you what the active ingredients are and how they work. Most importantly, if you're a silly little guy like me, you get this fabulous routine that makes it so easy. Tells you exactly what to do and when. Not only that, but you don't really need to refer to this because every item in your routine is numbered. Step 1, wash face. Use this much. Makes it so easy, dude. In the morning I wash my face and I use my Tone Control morning cream. That has SPF protection. Again, very important if you are concerned with keeping a youthful glow. And most importantly, just protecting your skin from the sun, which is a dangerous ball of gas in the sky. And we all act like that's normal. Evening, wash face. Under eye cream for my puffy dark under eyes. Night cream. Again, it says exactly how much to use. I have always been so bad at committing to any kind of routine because I just don't routine well. So geology is the only thing that works for me because it makes it so easy. Even if you're half asleep, number 1, number 2, number 3, carry on with your life. The skincare products are all scent-free. There's no distressing perfumes. It really is just simple, effective, easy. I highly recommend trying geology for yourself. Use the link down below, use my code EmmaThorne70 for 70% off your skincare trial set. That's a full month trial for only $12, plus you can get an add-on of your choice for free. Your skin will thank you, and so will I. Thank you so much for listening. Do check it out using the link down below or the QR code. Thank you to Geology for sponsoring this video. How Millennials Ruined Christianity. Take it away, my friend.
The millennial generation has single-handedly ruined Christianity.
Strong start.
It's a pretty outrageous statement, but it's true. Most of the issues and examples discussed in this video are addressing modern Protestant churches. However, issues like these aren't bound by a denomination. Millennial leaders don't take the church seriously.
Okay. Starting off real strong out the gate. Number 1, millennial leaders don't take the church seriously. Let's just quickly... Millennials, aka Generation Y, let's just quickly define this. Millennials are people born between 1981 and 1996, although apparently different sources vary by a year or two. So, if you were born between those two times, you personally, like me, are ruining Christianity. First of all, by not taking the church seriously. Let's be honest, I don't take the Christian church very seriously.
There is a serious problem with millennial leaders within the church. Most churches these days offer 2 services, one in the morning more tailored towards families and the elderly, and one in the evening, which is more suited to youth and young adults.
Those bastards!
If you've ever been to both services, you'll notice a stark difference between them. Young people are the future, and current trends predict a mass exodus of churchgoers in the next decade. This is not...
Oh, we're already there, my friend. Obviously, I'm in the UK, where we have, different demographics to other places in the world, but our church attendance dropped off a cliff yonks ago. There you go, there's church attendance between 1980 and 2005. Whee!
Not good. So most churches do what they can to keep people in attendance, but they get it horribly wrong. Millennial pastors, in a bid to stay relevant and hip, which no one is buying, by the way, turn most sermons into a comedy set, and as the service goes on, the pastor gets more and more desperate to keep everyone's attention.
Having known people who attend Church of England churches, which are, and apologies to my American audience, this is most of you, and this is more going to be for you, so you can drop your experiences and knowledge down below, but I'm going to relate some UK church knowledge here. I know lots of people who are very invested in the church and really lament the traditionalist view of, the Church of England as a whole, because it does help attract people to church to make the sermons more interesting, to make it relevant to modern people's daily lives. To make it more open and inclusive to more people means more people will come. That seems like kind of an obvious one. But sermons used to be more boring and serious, is essentially what we're saying here. And then fewer and fewer people went. So now modern pastors are trying to make them more relatable and funny and interesting. How is that how where's the bad? What's the bad? Also, there's a lot of clips of this specific pastor. I guess this is someone that this channel particularly hates.
From the off, most pastors crack jokes about themselves or others. They'll read one scripture about faith and then go off on some unrelated story about how they flip someone the bird in traffic, but it's all good because they ask God for forgiveness. Or they'll highlight one member of the congregation and talk about how they're single and it's okay and God is with them in their season of singleness. No one is safe. They'll self-deprecate. No one is safe?
What are they saying, that it's mean of church pastors to single people out? Because they've always done that. I've been prayed for by a church. I don't want it. I guess I'd agree with that. I'm not really sure. This is a very spurious general point, which just seems to be like, I don't like comedy in church, is this whole point so far.
And laugh at themselves, single out friends or other church staff members, highlighting insecurities or embarrassments.
Isn't that... I think all of those... Maybe I am one of the millennials who has ruined Christianity, because I think all of those things are a good thing. You want to make your sermon humanising, so people can relate to it. Admitting having flaws and insecurities and that you're a person but God loves you anyway and here's how we work through that. How is that not good? How is that not, like, the point of a good church sermon? Christians in the comments, help me out here, because I do not understand.
All for cheap laughs. It's not okay, and frankly, it's repulsive.
It's repulsive to have a bit of comedy, a bit of levity. No, we should all be reading Latin very seriously in a cold, drafty building where the lights don't work. That's proper Christianity. This is such, like... it's hard to tell because it's just a voice, but he doesn't sound that old. But this is really like old man yells at cloud behaviour so far.
If I wanted to go see a comedy, I'd go see an actual comedian, not some wannabe. Another issue is that most millennial pastors view being a pastor as a non-committal role. The issue with the role of a pastor these days is that it's a job. Now you might think that most people are committed to their jobs, but that is where I would disagree. People search for jobs that suit them, not the company or the community, which I think is fine in a secular sense, but this way of thinking has infected the modern church.
Okay, so the other thing I've noticed is that all of this so far is, I think, and I reckon, there's no actual facts involved. It feels like this guy has gone to like one or two sermons that he didn't like because the pastor made jokes. And he's like, and therefore that's all Christianity right now. Because of millennials, they're all like this, and it's all bad. And also, none of the pastors take their job seriously, and they're all doing things for cheap laughs, not because they care about the sermons. I think that's probably not true. I think when people are telling jokes to their congregations, it's to engage them. Maybe I'm naive for thinking the best of people who have actually chosen their job as one that is like, you know, serving a community and serving the God they believe in. Like, I think it's very pessimistic, really like reading the worst into people, which doesn't strike me as very Christian. I'm just saying.
The traditional role of a church leader is someone who is committed to the community that he is in, usually for the rest of his life. Pastors these days have resumes and ministry degrees, and they're always looking for opportunities that put them in the best light for potential employers.
Oh no. Modern pastors are educated. They understand the text better than just sort of reading it and saying boring things. How is that not better for the church? How is it not better for the church to have a more theologically educated leadership?
They're not committed. They're selfish. The moment they're met with a disagreement or there's a controversial confrontation in their youth or young adult group, they freak out.
Says who? So what? You can't just say things. They're all selfish. I've met every Christian pastor in the world. They're all selfish. They all freak out when there's any kind of... Like, that's like a huge part of the job, isn't it? Is like, you know, sort of being there as community support. I feel like this person has had some bad experience that has jaded them. They're looking at every person they meet in the most negative light possible. Okay, so millennial leaders don't take the church seriously. That one just read as personal vendetta. Let's see, aren't good role models. What about this one?
Which is that millennial church leaders, particularly men, aren't good role models. Young men are lost these days. Feminism has destroyed traditional values and have warped what it means to...
Young men are fucked these days, and it's women's fault. I was just about to be like, oh, it's mostly men that's the problem because of feminism. Right. Just a reminder, what feminism, like, you know, the origins and the movement of feminism, the purpose was purely advocating for gender equality. Political and social equality for women. There's no way to say that feminism ruined X, Y, and Z, or like feminism ruined anything to do with society without just saying that you don't want women to have equal rights. That's literally what that is. Some people will go off on a third wave feminism is blah blah blah, but if you think that feminism as its origin, as a concept, ruined this, that, and the other about society, you are just saying you're against equality for women. And I wish they would say that rather than using the word feminism, because it sounds like, well, maybe they have some, you know, specific interesting point. No, they just don't want equality.
To be a man. And now the average guy is left alone, empty-handed, and disrespected. Young men are constantly under attack by legacy media and social media trends. They've been told that their masculinity is toxic and are offered...
No, they haven't. That's not what toxic masculinity is. Otherwise, it would just be masculinity. Toxic masculinity is something else.
Nothing in return. By default, most men have now become soft, feminine, and weak. The church is a place where men should find value, meaning, and purpose, but thanks to millennials, the church has nothing to offer.
This guy's literally saying what so many of these anti-feminist dudes say without saying, so I'm kind of grateful to him for that, which is that the worst thing that can happen to a man is that he's treated like a woman. Men are now soft and feminine, and so the church has nothing to offer them. But I thought the church had lots of lovely things to offer women in their special way for their special role, which is lesser than a man. It's lesser than a man. No, it's equal, it's just different. And you know, they need to submit to the man. But it's equal in a way that you just wouldn't understand because God's mysterious. Men have nothing now because they are too much like women. Well, thanks very much.
When you think of a strong man, you think of someone...
This is supposed to be the good role models one. Yeah, the next one is about women's roles. So, and feminism is destroying Christianity is a later section. So either there's going to be a lot of repetition, or this guy has a lot to hate about women and equal rights.
One who is firstly in shape. They'll either run, lift weights, or at the very minimum, participate in daily moderate to vigorous exercise. They have a strong presence when they walk into a room, commanding respect and attention.
I'm sorry. Feminism has ruined men in the church because now men don't exercise enough? Somebody help me out, I'm completely fucking lost. Maybe it's my stupid feminine brain that is just leaving me behind in this discussion, but I have no idea what the fuck this guy's talking about. This is so like, yeah, and another thing, just like vague collections of like Daily Mail headlines, red pill sort of spurious ideas, and I reckon men aren't good anymore because and men used to work out. What does that have to do with their Christian faith? What is that? How does that affect the church? Your pastor's supposed to be super dedicated to the church and like above all else, but he's got to have time to get jacked.
They think before they speak and are articulate with their words and speech. Most millennial leaders lack any of these defining qualities.
Well, okay, that sounds like a contradiction to me, because he's saying the best sermons were where they just regurgitated the Gospels in a serious way before. Now that modern pastors are improvising more and adapting their sermons to make them more personalised to their congregation, they lack articulation. Are we seeing the contradictions in what he's saying here? Are we picking up the fact that he's just saying things that start from popular anti-feminist talking points and then just go off on like, I reckon because I saw this guy once and I didn't like it. He told a joke at church and I didn't like it. And then I looked around and some people weren't jacked. So that's why feminism ruined Christianity. This is quite a low effort, low intellect argument so far.
They're either fat or overweight and hold no conviction that they are
They're either fat or overweight. So weird. So much of the, like, conservative, sort of red pill-esque content that we see on YouTube is just fatphobic. Whether it's video games or Christian evangelism, so much of it just boils down to fat phobia. It's really bizarre.
Are a person that you should take seriously and listen to. Do you really think if someone who is overweight is up on stage talking to you about discipline and denying the flesh, that you would earnestly listen to them? Additionally, most men are insecure and divorced or subservient to their wives.
This is a joke. This has to be a joke. This is like somebody taking the piss out of a conservative evangelical, right? Right? Men are fat and divorced and subservient to women. And that's why the church is over.
And intention. You can tell by the way they act that this is the case.
This is an aspen. You can tell that it's an aspen tree because of the way it is.
They often pander to the feminine view.
Trust me, bro. Source for every point I make in this video, trust me, bro. I know. I'm a man on the internet.
By not being confrontational and calling out sin, never leading with logic but with emotion and feelings, and are easily offended.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. This guy making this video seems like the most easily offended man in existence. He's offended that people inject comedy into their sermons. He's offended that women exist. Anyone who is the, like, anti-woke, anti-snowflake, people like that are the most easily offended of anyone. To the point where they're making lengthy videos about how millennials ruined the church because people are fat now. Because men are more like women, and women are trash. I liked the bit where he had all the footage of the jacked men working out. That's fucking gay!
Reason 2. The destruction of the traditional family. Point 1. A woman's biblical role is...
Oh, it's a different voice. I was like, he's putting on a deeper voice and he's gone in a more echoey room, but I guess they've sourced different voices to really hammer this point home. Doing that, I do wonder if they couldn't have found a woman to read this second point. Probably don't know any. Probably aren't any that would have been willing. Fair enough.
Shamed. In many Christian circles amongst millennials, mainly in the Protestant church, it is shamed upon to only want to be a traditional woman.
Is it? I have never in my life come across a social group cultural shame for somebody wanting to be a homemaker and a wife and a mother. I've never seen it. I've seen it encouraged a lot. You know what does culturally still get shamed? Men wanting to be stay-at-home husbands and fathers. Men wanting to get better paternal rights and spend more time with their children. But no, it's only the women that should want that. And presumably these women are being shamed for it because I've made that up with a voice of authority. What bullshit.
Of a strong leading husband and a mother who cares and nurtures for her children.
Talk about shaming women's roles. I'm going to bring this up again. Earlier, he did basically say men have nothing to gain from the church now because they are more like women. That is shaming women's traditional roles. Is saying that men are so cursed and sad now because they are more like women.
This demonic worldly culture has permeated the church, again mainly in Protestantism, being one of the causes of the breakdown of the traditional nuclear family, which had been established for centuries, worked properly, and is God's design. Millennials grew up in a culture that told women that they need to get a degree and work a 9 to 5.
No, millennial women, ideally, for the most part, grew up in a culture that said, you can do what you want. A lot of those women grew up still being told, you should find a good husband. You should try and find a good husband and settle down. Women today are still born being taught that. They're so afraid, men like this are so scared of women being educated because they know that women, and this is probably going to be mentioned in the video, that women won't be as subservient to men if they are better educated, if they have a better social outlook, if they experience more in the world and know more, they're not going to take being a servant to a man. For that kind of conservative man, that's bad. Women are out there learning that they're people. and that they have skills and abilities and that they can follow their heart and do what they want. That's bad for men that want to treat them like slaves. What other explanation is there? Oh, but it's God's plan. It's also God's plan to stone disobedient children. You're not hammering on about that in a video.
The idea of being a stay-at-home mum or a devoted wife became a stereotype to avoid amongst millennials, not a calling to embrace.
It is not some, grand scheme to train women that you have to get a job. Teaching women that they can do what they want, that they can get an education, that they are legally allowed now to get an education. Hooray. Feminism. Letting women be educated. Women are allowed to be doctors now? A disgrace. If all women suddenly became stay-at-home mothers and wives, society would fall apart. We need women working now. I'm sorry, but we do. And as I say, every time we have this conversation, there are lots of women and men, and that's okay, that would love to stay home and be homemakers and raise their children full-time, but they can't afford it because a single-parent income just isn't enough to support a family now. You're shaming people for having to support their families.
This shift placed immense pressure on women to lead
Immense pressure. Sorry, I'm annoyed. I get pettier when I'm annoyed.
Their families in ways they were never meant to. As the Apostle Paul clearly states in Titus 2, verse 3-5, teach the older women likewise that they be reverent in behaviour, not slanders, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they admonish the young women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, homemakers,
chaste,
good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God may not be blasphemed.
I'm sure no human man writing the Bible had an agenda to put that in there. Here's another similar Bible verse, if we're just reading Bible verses to make a point, from 1 Peter. Slaves, submit yourselves to your masters with all respect, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the cruel. We could sit here and read out the most heinous Bible passages for hours and hours, God. Commanding destruction, commanding infants be dashed against rocks. Just because you have a Bible quote for it doesn't mean it's acceptable in the modern day, okay? These books were written in ancient times by ancient men who treated women like shit, and we've moved past it. If you don't want to grow up with society, then fucking exile yourself to the moon. And have a lovely time there. We won't miss you.
A young woman should be discreet, which is to curb one's desires and impulses, to be self-controlled and temperate. Then homemakers, which is someone who makes and tends to and works the home, not a 9-to-5, not a boss woman running her own business.
Ugh, I don't know that I shall recover from such a burn.
To their husbands, that one's pretty self-explanatory. This is literally the opposite of what millennial women in the church are doing and are teaching younger women to be like.
Yeah, because that's old-fashioned bullshit. I'm very glad that modern progressive churches are not teaching women to be silent and stay in the home and obey their husbands. Women are people. That's fucked up. Treating anyone like a slave, subordinate, and not as good as, and not as important as, and not as valuable as another person is fucked up. If you believe it's fine because Bible, once again, I'd like to direct you to all of the heinous parts of the Bible that say horrible, horrible things. Why don't we stop and take a look at the 10 Commandments that you don't follow? Some of it's fine to modernize. Whether they do it consciously or not is not something that I am capable of knowing or judging, but it's essentially like, okay, we have to modernize some bits of the Bible, but I'm only interested in the ones that affect me. And as a man, I would much prefer a submissive, quiet, docile wife who dotes on me and stays home doing everything for me. Therefore, that part of the Bible is still relevant and must be upheld as godly, wisdom. All the bits that would affect me, that were horrible back in the old days, or that are morally repugnant to me, well, those bits don't count anymore. Those were only for the time. But the bits about women being slaves for me, that stays. For important biblical reasons. Not selfishness.
This needs to change because it's currently anti-God and anti-society and needs to stop.
Weak men.
Weak men. This leads...
I feel like we've done weak men. Surely we've covered weak men already.
To the next point, weak men. As society has pressured women to take on more leadership roles in a home, it simultaneously discourages men from fulfilling their God-given role as leaders, protectors, and providers. Many millennial men have been taught to avoid conflict, shirk responsibility,
and therefore they're fat. That's what he's doing. You see? That is so fucking weird. Do you think this guy has like a personal image? Like some sort of dysphoria or like a phobia of becoming overweight or something? That is so fucking weird.
Prioritize comfort over duty, which are extremely feminine traits. A lot of them are also...
Oh no, again, that is the worst thing you could be, is feminine, because women are lesser.
So subservient and submissive to their wives, which is literally the opposite of God's design, and they let their wives control and manipulate them and complain about them to their...
This is another problem with this kind of person that views, when they think that there should be inequality, when they think that one group, whether it's based on race or gender or whatever, when a group thinks that one group should have more rights than another and more say than another, they view equality as injustice, right? They think that it can only be one or the other. There has to be men on top or women on top, and therefore women are treading all over men in the home. No, most relationships now are more equal. Now tasks are divided between the men and the women. There doesn't have to be one slave in a relationship. There doesn't have to be one slave of genders in a society. It can and is more like an equal balance.
Their friends, which is not okay. A strong, godly man is essential for a strong, godly family. But when men fail to lead with courage and faith, the family structure suffers. Weak men create chaos, leaving their wives and children spiritually and emotionally vulnerable.
Says who? Give me the stats. Where's the proof for any of these claims that families are worse off because women have rights? Because women feel comfortable finally speaking out against their husbands doing stupid, awful things. Oh, women are allowed to complain when their husband is awful to them now. He's literally saying that's a bad thing. Fuck off. I hate you. You're so annoying.
It's no wonder that the traditional family has struggled to survive.
There's all the fucking dudes working out again. There's something wrong with this person that's put this video together. This guy's fucked. This dude's not well.
Point 3. Divorce rates.
Yeah.
Another factor that can't be ignored is the skyrocketing divorce rates.
Yeah. So what happened is, in the old days, women were forced into marriages where they weren't allowed, because of people like you, to speak out against their husbands treating them incredibly badly. Now, people of any gender are able to leave their partners if they're abusive or horrible, or just if they aren't in love anymore and their relationship is causing a strain on their family. Now people have the choice to leave and be safe and happy. What a bad thing for society. It was much better when it was women who were always downtrodden and they weren't allowed to leave or complain. I'm going to skip this section because I'm starting to get bothered and we're just repeating the same thing.
Stupid things and destroying the family and having your kids grow up in a divorced home is not cool.
It's not cool. As a child of... Well, you know, this is probably not going to go down super well with any conservative evangelicals watching, but my parents were never actually married. So, as a bastard who grew up in a single-parent household, I can categorically say that I had a much healthier and happier upbringing than if, for some reason, my mother had been forced to stay with my crazy dad. Because these are some of the situations in which people don't get married or stay married. Typically there's a reason, because being together would be worse for the family and the child. If I had grown up with my dad, I would not be here. I would be some kind of fringe conspiracy theorist living in a hole in the ground. Okay? It is not just better to have a married man and a woman never divorced, stay together for the family. Other types of family are just as healthy for children as male-female couples who stay married forever. This person is just stuck in, I don't even know, the propaganda of the 1950s, as is so often the case with these evangelical conservatives. What's the next section? Feminism destroys women. Again, I can't imagine there's anything new in here, but we'll have a look.
This is the first generation to have women in their 40s crying about being quote-unquote boss women. Lastly, we're really starting to see the long-term consequences of
Why are women in their 40s crying about being boss women? Women in their 40s who are bosses are not crying, they're just getting on with their work.
These cultural shifts. For the first time, we have a generation of women in their 40s openly expressing deep regret about the choices they were told would make them happy, and it's extremely sad.
Because in the past, as you specifically said before, they weren't allowed to express, or they weren't able or safe or comfortable to express their dissatisfaction. Now women can choose, and some of choosing in life is regretting. How many men regret not picking this career path when they were younger, or, anything? Like, people have regrets in their life, okay? Have you never seen a Christmas movie where office dad regrets spending too much time at work and not with his family? That happens to men too. This is so backwards. This is just like, I want to live in a fictional 1950s America where a hot woman is subservient to me and also does all of the hard things that I don't want to do, like looking after the house and the children. I don't want to do any of that. I just want her to listen to me and bring me everything I need and never talk bad about me to my friends. Well, fuck your fantasy. I'm sure that's a lovely dream in which everyone in the world is your slave, but that's not real life. Grow up.
The boss woman narrative told millennial women to prioritize career over family. But now, many are realizing it was a lie. They're achieving professional success, but feeling unfulfilled.
This is just another thing that conservative men just say. I reckon women are now, unhappy because they've had careers. Why aren't men unhappy that they picked careers instead of being house husbands? Oh, because God said that man should be in charge.
Because they're missing out on the joy of building a family, and when they are 50, 60, and 70 and have no offspring or family, it will be even worse and more depressing for them. This regret is heartbreaking, but it should serve as a wake-up call and what not to do for younger generations and generations to come.
The problem is, what feminism says is that women should have the right to choose, because all people should have the right to choose equally. And this guy is trying to pressure women into a different specific life, and doesn't see any problem with training women to be subservient to men, literally to be subservient to men, to be silent. He has no conception of the fact that that is just as bad as this imaginary evil of forcing women into careers and university. It's just that one gives them access to education and learning and expanding their horizons, learning that they are capable on their own, and the other forces them into a narrow confine of relying on men. It's pure selfishness, because one of them benefits him as a conservative man and one of them doesn't. Women are going out and getting an education and careers, and then they don't need me anymore, and they're not going to be willing to be subservient to me. Therefore, that's the bad way.
Reason 3. Millennials are cocked on social issues and have enabled social decay.
Did he say cucked?
Millennials have become easily one of the most cocked out generations when it comes...
What's he saying? Cocked? Cucked? Cocked out? Millennials are one of the most cocked out generations? That can't be what he's saying. The captions say cocked out, but they're auto-generated.
...comes to social issues and addressing things which actually matter. This includes issues within the church, and since most social issues today in the West actually...
You mean like all the sex scandals of the Catholic Church? That's what you mean, right?
...concern the church, you can see the problem pretty easily. To start with, the millennials' idea...
It's going to be abortion. Abortion's going to be in here.
...of truth came from their parents, who were mostly boomers. This meant their view on history and on society was entirely based around post-war liberalism and the counterculture. From the role of women and feminism to the role of men, to their views on things like immigration and culture and heritage and so forth, it was all subjugated to this post-war idea of...
So, being progressive and being liberal is bad, is what this can be summed up as.
liberalism that their parents, the boomers, held to be some sort of self-evident truth. Easily the best example of this to start with is the promotion of feminism and feminist-adjacent values within the church.
Feminist-adjacent values is such a funny term, because feminism is equal rights for all genders. So, feminist-adjacent ideas is just like equality. Equality. Okay, I'm getting bored. We are repeating ourselves. Enabled resentment of men. Okay, I'm done. I've had enough of this because you saw it. You saw it. You were here. I'm not sorry for ruining Christianity. I'm having a great time here being a boss babe, not being a slave to a man in a relationship that I didn't want to be in, where I'm not allowed to speak out about it. I personally think that's a good thing, that I am not beholden to that idea. I guess if you hate women, then fair enough. Probably is a shit situation for you. Well, we can pat ourselves on the back for a job well done in accurately guessing from before we even started the video that the problem was women. The problem is this person hates women, wants women to be slaves, and blames millennials for some reason for women being free to choose things for themselves and allowed to have a job and literally speak out against their husbands. At least they made clear very quickly that they are not a person worth listening to. They're just spouting things like, I hate women and fat people because I reckon it's bad, with no sources, like citation needed on the entire video. What a load of shit. Like, people really have the confidence. This is the problem. Okay, this is the real problem with the church. The problem with conservative Christianity. Okay, let me lay this out for you based on my personal spurious opinion and what I have seen in YouTube videos one time. I'm ribbing this video for generalizing, if that wasn't clear. That kind of conservative Christianity makes men feel like they should be superior, that just by being men, they deserve to be in charge, to have their whims adhered to not have anyone speak out against them, to control their wives and their families and the women around them, so they can say any old shit, any old bullshit that comes to mind with confidence and feel empowered when they have no fucking clue what they're talking about. When they have no educational background on the topic, when they have nothing but common sense fallacies based on their own selfish desires. That is what produces the worst men. It's not men who eat burgers that are ruining society. It's men who think that by being born men, they are inherently better and deserve something. I'm a man and therefore I deserve all of these things and I'm not getting them because of feminism. That's what this is, in a nutshell. If you liked this video, do give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss future videos, catch up on some previous ones, go nuts! Leave your thoughts down below. If you would like to support this channel and what I do here, you can become a channel member. You get some goofy little emotes and comment priority. Check out today's sponsor using the link down below. That all helps me out. The best way to support this channel is via the Patreon. With that, I must give a big old shout out and a thank you to my giant chickens and colossal quackers over on Patreon. Especially Conla. God damn it, Conla. Most importantly, have yourselves a very lovely week, and I will see you really soon.